In August of 1994, two men named Louie Van Grudel and Wade Sioden were dropped off by helicopter deep in the mountain wilderness of Vancouver, British Columbia. They were consultants for a timber company, so their job was to assess this area to see if it was suitable for logging. As they were walking through the forest going about their business, they were stopped at about 11 a.m. when they heard this deep huffing noise off in the brush right next to them. And Wade recognized what it was right away. It was the sound of a very agitated bear coming right towards them. Both men are carrying bear spray, so they pull that out of their packs, but there's a safety pin on these cans that needs to be pulled if you're going to employ the spray. Well, each of the men had used this very heavy-duty flagging tape to tape those closed so that they wouldn't accidentally come out and go off in their backpacks. Well, this also means that in order to use it, it's going to take some time to get that tape off. So instead of fiddling with that and stand their ground, both men, they put that in their vests, they drop their packs, and they retreat to go climb up two separate trees to try and escape this bear. Wade, he drops his vest, which weighs about 60 pounds, at the base of his tree. Now, remember, that's where his bear spray is, so he drops that at the base of the tree. It's also got his radio in it, but that allows him to pretty quickly climb this tree up to about 20 feet. Louie, on the other hand, he keeps his vest on with his spray in it, but as he's trying to climb his smaller tree, each time he tries, the branches are just snapping off. And then all of a sudden, not too long after, this huge grizzly bear comes bounding out of the brush and makes its way right for Louie. Louie, he's looking at it, realizing he's not going to make it, so he has to fight. So he pulls out his can of bear spray and he's desperately fumbling with that tape, but he cannot get it off. And Wade is screaming at him, spray it, but he can't get it. So the bear comes up, it's got its ears back, it's gnashing its teeth and growling. It gets to within 3 feet of Louie, then it stands up on its rear legs and it's just basically screaming at him. And then it takes both of its paws and just checks Louie like this. And Louie goes flying back and rolls down this tiny little embankment where he immediately goes into the fetal position and he puts his hands behind his neck to protect his neck. The bear's on him immediately. It takes one massive swipe with its paws at Louie, almost taking off one of Louie's arms. It was so powerful. And then it begins biting at his inner thigh. And then it lifts Louie up in the air, and Louie is screaming at this point. And Louie is trying to balance on the other foot, kind of bouncing off the ground while the bear's got his thigh in its mouth. And then the bear takes its paw and whips that other leg out from underneath Louie and just slams him to the ground. So now Louie is back on his stomach. The bear's on top of him. Louie's got his hands back behind his neck protecting it. And then he feels and hears as this bear is gnawing at the back of his leg, at his hamstring. And he turns around and he sees through his jeans this bear rip out his hamstring. And again, he is screaming bloody murder. Then the bear turns its attention from his lower half and moves to his upper half, and it's mauling him. It goes for his neck. It's biting his neck, and Louie still got his hands there protecting it, but it bites down on his left hand and shatters it. It bites off one of his fingers, or at least part of one of his fingers, and then it begins biting at Louie's head. It's at this point that over Louie's screams, Wade can hear a noise that he describes as the sound of wet burlap ripping. And what that wet ripping sound was the bear ripping off Louie's scalp. So again, Louie's laying on his stomach. The bear grabs him by the front of the scalp and it's ripping it back off. And as it's doing that, Louie's head is being lifted up like this until finally the bear rips off his entire scalp and Louie just goes slamming back down to the ground. Well, at this point, Louie stops screaming, and the bear realizes it has defeated its prey, and so it just begins to bury Louie under a bunch of sticks and dirt, and then it defecates on Louie, indicating that it was marking Louie as its cache of food. And then the bear turns its attention to Wade, and Wade is horrified when he sees the bear's face. It's just absolutely soaked in Louie's blood. The bear makes its way over to the base of the tree, and amazingly, this huge bear begins climbing the tree. Wade did not think a bear this size would be able to do that, so he's shocked. So he begins climbing higher, but he can hear this bear gaining on him. The branches are snapping. He looks down, and the bear is grabbing branches with its teeth and ripping the branches off so its huge bulk can make its way up to him until eventually it does catch up with him about 30 feet or just under 10 meters. up the tree, and it grabs on to Wade's foot and just pulls him out of the tree. And both the bear and Wade go tumbling out of the tree. They fall 30 feet to the ground, and the bear is disoriented at this point, and it kind of backs off. This gives Wade enough time to grab his bear spray. Luckily, he's able to use his teeth and rip off that tape, and then he sprays the bear. And again, this disorients the bear, giving Wade enough time to climb back up the tree. But the bear, amazingly, does not give up. It goes back up the tree again after Wade. So Wade, he knows basically this is his last shot. He waits until the bear is right on top of him, within like 2 feet of him. The bear opens its mouth to grab his foot again. Wade reaches down and he sprays that spray directly into the bear's mouth. And this really upsets the bear. The bear immediately falls out of the tree, and it just lays on the ground for a long time, really struggling to breathe, until eventually, after a few minutes, it is able to catch its breath. But at this point, it's had it, it's done. It goes, back off into the forest. So Wade, he kind of waits a little bit. Louie still lying over there, completely silent, covered in sticks and bear poop. And so he waits a little bit, makes sure the bear's gone. And then he gets down and he runs over to check on Louie. And amazingly, as he's talking to Louie, like, hey, man, Louie responds. He's still awake. He's coherent. And Louie actually tells him, I quit, man. I quit. And Wade says, no, Louie, don't give up. Hang in there, man. Hang in there. And Louie kind of chuckles and he goes, no, I quit this job. And at this point, Wade is like, okay, good. He's coherent. He knows what's going on. So Wade, he grabs his radio out of his vest and he climbs back up the tree to get a radio signal. Amazingly, he's able to get one. He calls for help. And then a helicopter, some 45 minutes or hour, between 45 minutes, hour and a half, it's unclear. Later, a helicopter comes and they're able to pick up Louie and Wade, and they fly them to the hospital. Wade was okay. He just had some lacerations on his leg where the bear had grabbed him, but Louie was in bad shape. Again, he's missing his scalp. He has massive damage to his arms, legs, his neck, some on his face. But over the course of the next 3 months, he would recover. He would go through 16 surgeries over the next 2.5 years. Now he wears a baseball cap because the doctors, while they were able to do a skin graft and put skin back on his head, he obviously cannot grow hair there. He would end up quitting his job. He is now a phys ed teacher with a master's degree in education, while Wade, on the other hand, right after his recovery, would go straight back to work.